Nonetheless, today we're going to tell you about some behind-the-scenes stuff. In the first segment of the show, we're going to talk about reality real estate television because we get so many questions about this, and then we also have so many people who are uninformed or misinformed about how real reality TV is. Shows on HGTV, $1 Million Listing, all those types of shows. Have a certain TV aspect to them. So are there aspects of reality real estate TV that are like a regular real estate transaction or like flipping a home? Yes, there are aspects of them that are accurate. But there's also a lot of aspects of them that are not accurate. When it's funny, I see a lot of times where they're negotiating and they're going back and forth in between a room. How often have you done that in your real estate career, Robert?
Well, probably never. I mean, usually people like to take time to actually digest, and there is something called a written counteroffer. So
right.
It's definitely interesting the liberties they take. Do you know about the part where buyers only look at 3 houses?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that I wish that happened.
Yeah,
our buyer agents sure love it if people only look at 3 houses, but normally they look at about 30.
Yeah.
So some look at fewer, but a lot of people look at a lot of them while they decide and narrow down areas and neighborhoods. And I think there's certainly an element that people don't look at as many as they used to because of what's happened with technology and those types of things. But certainly the average buyer, 30 is probably a high number. People don't, not the average is not 30. It's definitely lower than that. But the norm is more than 3. I think the other side of it that's amusing. And that as a real estate investor myself, who's bought and sold, owns lots of real estate, we've helped customers, buy and sell thousands of homes. The dialogue or the narrative they display when somebody flips a house is always pretty intriguing.
Well, there's usually there's a formula to the show. It's find a house, start flipping the house, come up with a problem, and then successfully navigate through it, and then make a whole bunch of money.
And sell it at an open house.
Right.
Sell it at an open house.
And it's always interesting because I can't personally think of one of those shows where, usually they put the numbers on the screen at the end, and they're not calculating commissions or closing costs, or, they're calculating basically what they bought it for, how much they put in, and what their profit is. And it's always some huge positive number, and it always looks extremely easy. But I can tell you what's interesting is that most flippers, they get into it and they have no clue what's going on. They really go in thinking it's going to be like one of those shows, and they most of the time get in over their head, and many times they're either barely making money on the first one or they're losing money because
they're creating a lot of liability.
Yeah, I think a lot of the flippers in real life, they put a lot of the same stuff in all their same flips. They get really good deals on cabinets, really good deals on flooring, really good deals on carpet. They don't individualize it too much, and on these shows, half of the show is design.
Yeah, which doesn't end up happening. That's where you spend a lot of money, time, and labor.
And when flippers get into that, especially first-time flippers, that's when you really have problems.
Yeah, because they're designing it like they'd want to live instead of how they need to sell it and make it neutral and sellable to a larger audience instead of just them liking it. And there's an emotional element to it that kind of steps in to where it should just be a financial element. It's more or less a business. The other interesting thing, so speaking to and having had relationships and friendships with some of the high-profile real estate agents that are on some of these shows, and it's interesting because they would tell you the same thing behind closed doors. That we've had Barbara Corcoran speak to us live. Obviously we have a great relationship with her, and talk to her a lot about some of the behind-the-scenes parts of Shark Tank. I almost called it Shank Tank. That'd be a bad one. But so Shark Tank, that'd be a completely different show. But Shark Tank, obviously not necessarily a real estate show, but learning from her and some of the other sharks that we've had the opportunity to meet. The interesting thing about it is there are hours and hours and hours of the pitch that don't get shown. There's so much data and information that the sharks comb over. And then not only that, when they make a deal, there's usually a very long period of due diligence to verify everything that was said in the thing. So a lot of the deals don't actually end up getting made. And I think real estate's the same way. You'll see someone go under contract on a house on TV. A lot of times they don't end up closing on the house. The closing doesn't end up happening. And the same thing with the flip. They're always, a lot of times they're showing those things before it actually even gets to closing. So they're saying, oh, it's sold, and it's still got to get the closing table. There's websites out there that debunk this, and but we just want you to understand that any type of reality TV, whether you're watching the Housewives, whether you're watching Marriage Boot Camp, the Kardashians, you got to take it with a grain of salt and not as fact. The reality of what happens in real estate, you can learn from people that are doing it every day. The people that are doing it for TV are doing it to get more people to watch, to sensationalize it, to make it look cooler than it is. Man, I've got to tell you, I wish what we did was as cool as they make it look on TV.
I wish it was as easy as
I know, exactly.
That would
Really
be
easy
amazing.
on TV.
And I mean, house hunters, for example, they go look at 3 homes, they choose one, they don't talk about the inspection, they don't talk about any of the process going to closing, but, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but by the time they shoot all that, they've already picked that house, they're already under contract, and many times they've just closed on the property.
And then they go back and record.
Correct. They picked out 2 other homes. I know that we've
been involved in that.
Yeah, we've been involved in house hunters. We've been involved in property virgins. One of my listings when I was a listing agent full time was actually the chosen house on property virgins. And it's one of those things where they have to actually get permission from the sellers to be put on. I've had sellers that didn't want their property featured on those homes, or those shows, because they didn't want anybody talking badly about their homes. I had one guy, and it was kind of a sad situation. His mom had passed away, and he just couldn't take somebody going in and talking bad about his mom's house.
Yeah.
And he was just freaked out about it.
Yeah,
So,
there's an emotional attachment to real estate that not a lot of people understand.
yeah, so those things, they make it look very easy, but they have to. I mean, they go through so much by the time they even film that stuff, and it's a long process. And we had a normal closing process, just like we do on any home on the house that was picked on property.
And there's always so many elements of what they bring into the TV commercial to sensationalize it, and like I said, make it seem easy and cool, and we'll have people that will watch HGTV and say, oh, I want to be a real estate because that looks like a lot of fun. Well, then maybe you should go be a real estate agent actor, because that's not what happens in the real world. Because if you're in love with what they do on TV, that's not really what we do. There's certainly some crossover and some elements of it, but there's a lot of it that doesn't. And it's funny. We actually a couple of years ago, our media agent was contacted by somebody, and we were encouraged and asked to interview with the producer about possibly doing a TV show about our team. And we declined it. We never even spoke to them. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't necessarily want that kind of intrusion into my personal life, because I couldn't imagine what it was like. I mean, we already get a little bit of element of that with having the radio show and TV and different things. But more than that, it was probably just what I felt like, kind of not really being completely real with people. The aggrandizement, the kind of the drum up of making it seem so sensational, to me misleads consumers, and then almost kind of sets you back when the consumer comes to you expecting to have what they see on TV happen, and it doesn't. And there's a letdown.
Well, in all those shows, $1 Million Listing, everything, you're looking at individual agents on the shows, but those agents run teams. Those agents' sales, everything that they do. They
have lots of people.
Yeah, they run entire teams, and again, I don't know these people, but they're going on very few listing appointments. They run it like a team,
business.
But the show's just showcasing them and their personality, and it's hard to pass that idea on to consumers when they're seeing one thing on TV and then they're getting another.
Yeah, and we already obviously have challenges sometimes with that, because people expect that we're going to work with, personally work with every customer, and we certainly do oversee everything. And there's a lot of customers we communicate with, and we see, and we congratulate and thank and things like that, but it's just not possible. That's why we want to serve thousands of people, and you can't do that. You got to do that with a team.
Yeah, they're in charge of marketing, which is what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're marketing. Yeah. You're marketing right now. We're marketing. So.
Another element of the TV shows that I think almost always gets completely missed is the financing element, Mike. You never hear talk
about it.
No, let me get you pre-qualified and all this kind of stuff. It's basically, So that misleads consumers to think, oh, it's so easy, because they don't even go over it on TV. It just must be so easy to get a mortgage.
Yeah, not easy.
Yeah.
One thing too that, especially with flipping, there's different guidelines for lending. For instance, FHA, after a flip, you can't write a contract on it for 91 days. So, there's different aspects of financing that, like you said, never ever get mentioned in those shows.
Yeah, you don't ever see the mortgage lender get
No.
Brought in there. You don't ever see that.
The lender gets no respect.
You know what I think would be a really fun real estate reality TV show would be filming the closings. That would be a great reality.
That could get
That's like
interesting.
Walmart on Black Friday.
Right.
You get a lot of fighting. I wouldn't say it's not like fist fight.
It is better now that the buyers and sellers generally aren't in the same room.
Yeah,
I will
but
tell you.
but yeah, it's adversarial. I mean,
It
and
is.
and sometimes there's things that aren't perfect, and there's a number that's off, and people are already kind of selling a home or buying a home. It can be a challenging process. We want to make it as smooth as we can, but that challenging process and maybe some of the animosity you have towards the other side in the negotiation, and then you're sitting in the same room together. Having to play nice and sign paperwork. So there have definitely been some funny stories that we've had during closings, of some things. And Robert, I know you see the same all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we could actually do a show.
You could do a whole
on that,
show
which
on
is what we're talking about. But I mean, we could do an entire radio show on crazy closings and crazy showings. And I mean, the problem with the closing process is a lot of times one party feels like they got a little out negotiated, which is what you talked about. But this is somebody's largest financial asset, and there's so many emotions that go on with it, and it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for people to deal with it, especially when there's an attachment to the house, or they've been there for a long time, or they didn't necessarily have. I feel like we get that a lot on our listings, because we do such an incredible job negotiating for our sellers and getting the most money possible, that sometimes the buyers or the buyer's agent on the other side, there's maybe some animosity towards us because we got so many offers, we bid the house up, we did so many different things to position our seller as best we could. So we're going to continue this conversation after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show.